He sat alone at a corner table in the Grand Oak Hotel's elegant dining room, his tailored charcoal suit pressed to perfection, his salt and pepper hair combed back in that confident way successful men wear. The crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow across the polished wood and cream-colored walls. Other guests mingled in the background, their voices a gentle murmur beneath the soft classical music. Michael had built Harrison Technologies from nothing. 30 years of work, 30 years of sacrifice. Tonight was supposed to be a celebration dinner before tomorrow's board meeting, where he would finalize the biggest acquisition of his career. He didn't notice the young woman approaching his table at first. Emma Cole was 24, with blonde hair pulled back in a simple ponytail and kind eyes that had seen more hardship than most people twice her age. She wore the hotel's standard white blouse and black skirt, moving gracefully between tables with the efficiency of someone who had been doing this work for years. She had noticed Michael the moment he walked in. Not because of his expensive watch or his commanding presence, but because of the two men in dark suits who had followed him inside and taken a table by the window. She had worked at the Grand Oak for 3 years, and you learned to notice things, to read people, to sense when something wasn't right. As she refilled water glasses 2 tables over, she watched those men. Watched how they never looked at their menus, how one of them kept glancing at his phone, then at Michael, then back at his phone. How the other had positioned his chair to have a clear view of Michael's table. Emma had grown up in foster care, moving from home to home until she aged out of the system at 18. Life had taught her to be observant, to trust her instincts, and right now, every instinct she had was screaming that something was wrong. When Michael ordered a glass of champagne to toast his success, Emma brought it to his table with steady hands. But as she set it down, she did something she had never done before in her 3 years of service. She pulled a cocktail napkin from her apron, and on it, with the pen she always kept tucked behind her ear, she quickly wrote, "Don't drink it, and leave now." Her heart pounded as she folded the napkin and slipped it beside his champagne glass. For a moment, she stood there, terrified that she had made a terrible mistake, that she would lose her job, that she had let her imagination run wild. But then Michael picked up the napkin. His eyes scanned the words, and his expression changed. Not dramatically, just a slight tightening around his eyes, a small straightening of his shoulders. He was a man who had negotiated million-dollar deals. He knew how to keep his composure. Slowly, deliberately, he reached out and gently took Emma's hand. "Thank you for the excellent service tonight," he said clearly, his voice carrying just enough for nearby tables to hear. Then quieter, his gray eyes meeting hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. He added, "Come with me." Now, he stood, leaving the champagne untouched, and kept hold of her hand as if she were an old friend. Emma's mind raced, but she trusted that same instinct that had made her write the note. Together they walked through the dining room at an unhurried pace, past the men at the window table who were now watching with sharp attention. Michael nodded to the maître d'. "We'll be just a moment," he said smoothly, and guided Emma through the staff door into the kitchen. The moment they were out of sight, his composure cracked just slightly. "What did you see?" he asked. Emma explained quickly. The two men. Their behavior. The way one had been on his phone. "I used to work at a diner near the courthouse," she said. "I learned to recognize when people were watching someone. Really watching them. Those men. They're not here for dinner, Mr. Harrison." Michael pulled out his own phone and made a call. "Jack, I need you to send security to the Grand Oak immediately and call Detective Morrison. Tell him I think someone just tried to poison me." The next hour passed in a blur. Hotel security arrived. Then the police. The two men tried to leave but were stopped at the door. The champagne was taken as evidence. Michael's assistant arrived, flustered and frightened, with his bodyguard in tow. "I'm so sorry, sir," his assistant kept saying. "They told me they were cleared by your office. They said they needed to discuss the acquisition privately. It turned out the men were connected to a competitor who stood to lose everything if Michael's acquisition went through. The champagne had been tampered with. Not enough to kill him, the police said later, but enough to make him violently ill, enough to miss tomorrow's meeting, enough to destroy the deal." Through it all, Emma stood to the side, her arms wrapped around herself, wondering if she was about to be fired for causing such a disruption. Instead, when the police finally finished their initial questions, Michael walked over to her with something she hadn't expected to see on a man like him: tears in his eyes. "You saved my life tonight," he said simply. "Or at the very least, you saved everything I've worked for." "Why, you don't know me. You risked your job." Emma thought about her answer for a moment. "My foster mom used to say that we're all just walking each other home, that we're supposed to look out for each other, even strangers, especially strangers because you never know what someone is carrying." Michael smiled then, a real smile that made him look younger. "Your foster mom sounds like a wise woman." "She was the only one who was ever kind to me," Emma said softly. "She died 3 years ago. Cancer. I think about her every day." They stood there in the hotel's ornate lobby, this unlikely pair. A CEO in his expensive suit and a waitress in her work uniform. Two people from completely different worlds who had somehow found each other at exactly the right moment. "What's your full name?" Michael asked. "Emma Cole." "Emma Cole," he repeated as if committing it to memory. "I want to do something for you. To thank you properly." Emma shook her head quickly. "That's not necessary. I did what anyone should do." "But most people wouldn't have," Michael said gently. "Most people would have minded their own business. Assumed I could take care of myself. You didn't. You risked everything to help a stranger." The next morning, Emma went to work expecting to be called into the manager's office. Instead, she found an envelope waiting for her in her locker. Inside was a letter on thick, expensive stationery. "Dear Emma," it read in Michael's strong handwriting, "I've thought a lot about what you said, about your foster mother, about walking each other home. I realize I've spent 30 years building a company, but very little time building a life. My wife passed away 5 years ago. My children are grown and busy with their own families. I've been so focused on success that I forgot why I was working so hard in the first place. You reminded me that kindness matters more than money, that paying attention to people matters more than paying attention to profit margins. I want to honor your foster mother's memory by establishing a scholarship fund in her name for young people aging out of foster care. If you're willing, I'd like you to help me run it. This isn't charity. This is me offering you a job because you've already proven you have the most important qualification. You see people. You care. And that's worth more than any business degree. The salary is enclosed. Think about it. But please, say yes. With deep gratitude, Michael Harrison." Emma read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down her face. The salary was more than she had ever imagined earning. But it wasn't the money that made her cry. It was being seen, being valued, being offered a chance to turn one moment of courage into a lifetime of helping others. 6 months later, the Harrison Memorial Foster Youth Foundation opened its doors. Emma ran it with the same instinct and care she had shown that night at the Grand Oak. She interviewed every scholarship applicant herself, looked them in the eyes, and saw them. Really saw them. Michael visited the foundation office every week. He had stepped back from day-to-day operations at his company, letting his management team handle the details while he focused on what he called learning to live again. He and Emma would have lunch together, talking about the kids they were helping, about life, about loss, about second chances. Slowly, a friendship formed between them. Not romantic, just real. Two people who had found in each other something they had both been missing. Someone who understood that success isn't measured in dollars, but in moments of connection. On the anniversary of that night at the Grand Oak, Michael took Emma back to the hotel for dinner. They sat at the same table where she had served him that untouched champagne. This time, they ordered sparkling cider. "To your foster mother," Michael said, raising his glass, "for teaching you that we're all just walking each other home." "To second chances," Emma added. "And to people who listen to their instincts." They clinked glasses and smiled at each other across the table. Behind them, the chandeliers glowed warm and golden. Other diners laughed and talked. Life moved forward, the way it always does. But for these two people, time had stopped once, just for a moment. Long enough for a young woman to write a note. long enough for a successful man to realize that sometimes being saved means more than just surviving. Sometimes it means remembering how to truly live. And isn't that what kindness does? It doesn't just protect us from danger. It reminds us that we matter, that someone is watching out for us, that we're not walking this road alone. Emma's foster mother had been right all along. We're all just walking each other home, and sometimes, if we're very lucky, we find companions for the journey.